To a new Washington Post opinion piece by former FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb, the world is better prepared to deal with an outbreak than when SARS hit in 2003, but it still remains vulnerable. Dr. Gottlieb joins us now. He's currently a resident fellow at AEI, a member of the board at Pfizer, and a CNBC contributor. Dr. Gottlieb, good morning. Thanks for joining us. So the world is better prepared. Is part of that because China is being more helpful this time? Where do you gauge what they've done so far?
Well, China's being more helpful by China's standards. I don't think they've been very forthcoming. Remember, they only admitted that they had an outbreak of an unusual pneumonia December 27th after something they had provided to their own physicians leaked on his social media. They only started to become more forthcoming in mid-January when videos appeared on Twitter showing them taking people off of airplanes and testing people on airplanes. And they only admitted on Monday of this week that they had human-to-human transmission and 15 healthcare workers who were sick, which was a key fact. The fact that doctors are getting sick really more than suggests it proves that there's human-to-human transmission. Now this appears to have achieved sustained human-to-human transmission, and I think all the incremental information that we're getting shows that this is probably far more contagious than what we first assumed. Maybe less severe, but far more contagious. And I'm not sure that there's 830 cases. There might be 8,000 cases or more. We're probably missing a lot of very mild and moderate cases.
Mild, moderate cases that will go away themselves?
Exactly.
Or that will surface in a severe way in due course?
No, that will go away. So right now we're looking at statistics where 830 people have been confirmed to have the illness. Those are people who presented for testing. They were probably pretty sick. About 25% of them have severe illness. 25 have died. But if you assume that there's thousands and thousands of cases, it suggests that this isn't as severe. Not everyone is getting very serious illness. There's probably a lot of people with subclinical illness or mild cases who just think they have a cold and are staying home and not presenting and not getting tested. But this does seem to be, at this point, have achieved sustained human-human transmission in China and really reached sort of an epidemic level in China.
We're showing on the screen 30 million people on lockdown. That's what it says at the bottom. Lockdown might confuse some people, though. Eunice is telling us that, in fact, if you have a car, you can drive. The only thing that's at issue are planes and trains, for example.
Right.
Is that enough to contain this? I mean, how do you tell 30 million people that they can't go anywhere? If anywhere, China could, I suppose, but it's difficult.
Well, China can impose it better than we could, but,
Sure.
but these things typically don't work. If you think about it from a public health standpoint, trying to isolate people, what it's going to do is discourage people who are sick from presenting. And the question is, has China missed the golden window really to prevent a broader epidemic in China? And this really has reached epidemic proportions in China. That doesn't mean it's going to become a global pandemic. I think what we're going to end up seeing in other nations, though, are outbreaks, isolated outbreaks. You know, luckily in the United States, we're going to be running into the spring and summer when the epidemiology of spread changes. So if we do have some outbreaks here, we probably will have some isolated outbreaks. That doesn't mean it's going to translate into an epidemic outside of China.
The epidemiology of spread changes, meaning it happens less because it's not as cold? I mean, what does that mean?
Yeah, it means it might be harder to have respiratory droplets transfer in a different kind of a more human environment, but it means people aren't in close contact. So you don't see spread of communicable diseases as easily in summer months because people are outside, they're not in enclosed quarters, so it breaks the cycle of spread.
What do you make of the WHO's decision? Fauci, was somewhat critical of it. Dr. Fauci was in our earlier interview. There is some criticism of the WHO declining to declare it a national or a global crisis at this point. Why not get ahead of it than after the fact?
Well, I think they should have. They have a criteria. It probably could have gone either way in terms of how the WHO looks at this. They were probably concerned about the implications for China, the economic implications, as well as if you put more pressure on China at this moment in time, would it exacerbate or burden them in a way that would make it harder for them to respond to this? I'm not really sure exactly what went into that decision. They probably should have done it. It does give countries more latitude in terms of what they do. They'll be reevaluating this, I think, pretty soon.
Given what you're saying about the fact that this is probably more contagious than people originally realized, do you think there are currently more cases of it than one in the United States, even if it's not as severe as perhaps first feared?
Hard to tell. I mean, probably is the answer. And Fauci said this morning, Dr. Fauci said he wouldn't be surprised if there's some other cases around this individual. So there are going to be outbreaks here. We have to prepare ourselves for that we're going to see clusters of cases in cities, probably from an index case from an individual who came in from China. That doesn't mean it's going to become epidemic here.
We were dealing with SARS throughout 2003. The initiation, the first case of it, was reported in November of 2002. Do you think the market is treating this somewhat complacency, where we could have a SARS-like experience where 3 or 4 months from now we'll be talking about this? And if we are, we'll see the negative contraction that we saw in consumer-oriented retail spending like we witnessed in Hong Kong in 2003?
It's hard to see this abating. It's hard to see the Chinese being able to get quick control over this if it is as contagious as it's at least suggesting. There was a good paper out of Hong Kong yesterday suggesting that this is more contagious and there's probably many more cases than what we're reporting. I think from the comparison to SARS, this appears to be more contagious than SARS, less severe. But the question is, has it achieved sort of that golden point where it's contagious enough to spread rapidly, but still severe enough to cause a lot of harm? We don't know that yet. There's a lot we don't know about the characteristics of this virus, because what you worry about is something that achieves that sweet spot between being able to spread efficiently and keeping its host alive and its host well enough to spread it, but it's still causing severe illness. Remember, this is a new virus. So nobody's probably seen it before, and we might not have immunity to its components. So in the young, in the old, in the infirmed, this is going to cause a more serious illness.
As someone who was in a position of import, had the tables been turned in the past, can you understand why a country would want to withhold evidence on something like this? It seems very hard to get your head around the idea.
Well, why did they take 5 months to be forthcoming about SARS and not reveal the initial?
I don't know.
Right.
I mean, if the tables were turned, the U.S. would not do this at all, would they?
Not at all. I mean, we were very forthcoming with information. We had information about outbreaks. That's the expectation here. It also helps in response. I mean, maybe the Chinese presume they can get control of this before they have to admit that this is having a very distributed impact on their country right now. I don't know why they haven't been more forthcoming, and I don't understand all the credit that they're getting. I understand they made the sequences available early, and there is more information sharing, but the information sharing has been slow. The fact that only this week they announced that there were 15 healthcare workers who had become sick, and they had evidence of human-to-human transmission, we kind of knew that a week ago. It just took the Chinese a little longer to put that out.
Dr. Gottlieb, great to see you. Thanks for joining us as always.